Hey everybody, this is Gabe, and if I hated you, you would know. Yeah, so new episode of If I Hated You, You Would Know. Welcome to the show. My name is Gabe. I come on here and I talk about stuff. I guess the important caveat is that I will make mistakes, and if I do, please go into the comments and tell me what they are. Don't just tell me you're wrong, you're stupid, shut up. Like, tell me why I'm wrong and show me why I'm wrong. I want to learn. So I'm all about having that conversation. I got some cool interactions on the YouTube short where I talked a little bit about overthinking like the garbage media that I watch, which is basically what this is about, I guess. In the long and short of it. So, today I'm going to talk a little bit about physical media, talk about the movie Civil War, and then I'll be doing an interview with Mark Brockway. He's one of the authors of The Shadow Gospel, which is a book that I talked about in the first episode. There's a hair on my camera, one moment. Cats everywhere. Anyway, so one of the things that I think about like fairly regularly is the importance of physical media, right? I guess to tie it into like something that's contemporarily happening, right? We have this situation yesterday where the Super Bowl is going on and Bad Bunny performs, and like the media is like just hyper fixated on the reaction, right? Like people are so upset that, you know, it's all Spanish language, or they're so upset that he's not American, which is so insane to say, or they're so upset that, you know, Kid Rock has his thing, or that, you know, the Puppy Bowl didn't go the way they expected, whatever, right? Like, but 2 weeks from now, a week from now, like, we'll forget. It won't be a big deal. Like, people will have kind of let go of it. You know, there'll maybe be some think pieces in The Atlantic and whatever count on Fox News, I guess, is where think pieces happen on the other side. So with that said, really the thing that helps us to not forget is physical media, right? Like, we have this tendency to consume tons and tons of like television and movies and things like that we can not revisit easily sometimes. Like, things come and go on streaming services. Things come and go. Like, you know, people delete files and stuff like that. Digital media is very it can be very effervescent, right? Like, it can kind of just bubble up and float away. So a really good example, there's a movie that I watched like years and years ago where it's like this four guys like go into the woods, and in the woods there's this crazy like alien presence happening, right? And at some point a guy gets like sliced in half by like a falling barrier and stuff like that. Some people have suggested it might be The Ritual. I've never had the chance to go and watch The Ritual to see if it's that movie. So I'll have to go back and rewatch it. But for like literally 2 weeks after I watched it, I kept trying to find what movie it was in like my Netflix like previously viewed. Or maybe it was like a couple months later, and it became very difficult because I couldn't remember the name of the movie. I couldn't remember any of the actors. Right, and there's a chance that it had just left the streaming service. So with thinking about all that, like this kind of weird nature of like non-ownership, like of kind of renting the rights to view something or listen to a book or even read a book. Like, you have services like Hoopla through like your local library that allow you to borrow like digital like ebooks, right? And you have access to them for a limited time, just like you would at a library, but it's also, you only have access to it digitally. So, you know, even if you were a nefarious person that steals books from the library, which is definitely not something I've ever done in my life, you know, you can't, right? Like, because it's digital, it just disappears. And it can just be deleted or disappeared or changed or altered. And physical media creates this space where that's very difficult to do, right? It's going to be hard for somebody to take away my copy of a banned book, right? Whatever that might be, and for whatever reason that might be. Obviously there's no federally banned book list yet, I said yet way too easily there. But there's no federally banned book list, right? But if something like that were to occur, like, it then becomes very, very difficult to get rid of those physical books, like, short of a literal, like, Fahrenheit 451 kind of scenario where there's, like, a policing force that goes into people's homes and takes books, right? But even then, like, I can hide a paperback copy pretty easily, and I can hide something like that a lot more easily, and it's a lot more difficult to find and get rid of it than to just, like, delete somebody's access to a file. So it creates this barrier from disappearance, right? It creates this barrier from us losing track of, like, the message, the book, the story, what it's telling us. And, that goes for a lot of things, not just fiction, not just historical nonfiction, which is my main focus, but, like, things like mathematics and, like, metallurgy, or, how to, do woodworking, things like that. All those things are in a book. Like, everything that you could possibly need to know is in a book somewhere. So if we begin to, like, digitize it and create this space where it's very, like, impermanent, that creates, like, a really dangerous, like, it creates a ability for us to lose a lot of knowledge, right? So we think of the burning of the Library of Alexandria as, like, this horrific loss of knowledge. And yeah, there probably was a lot of unique information that was lost during, this tragic fire. But the way that, scrolls and manuscripts at the time were produced is that they were written down over and over again. They were transcribed, right? So the chance that something has made it into the Library of Alexandria and not been written down several times by somebody else is pretty, like, low. Just like the iterations of books and movies and television that aren't stored in physical media but are just digital, they're probably floating around in different places too. But why consolidate? Like, why create this space where we're giving corporate and outside control to what we can and can't have access to when it comes to media and information, right? So all those ideas kind of gang up in my brain and create, like, this real drive to, like, collect physical media. I like buying Blu-rays and DVDs of movies, especially movies that I haven't heard of, right? Like, I don't feel like I need a copy of Gladiator because I know that even if the apocalypse were to happen, there's probably going to be, like, DVD copies of Gladiator laying around still, right? Or books that I know are hard to find or fairly obscure that have lower print runs. Like, I'm interested in obtaining and having physical copies of those. If only for, like, the historical record, for lack of a better term. Like, the hopes that, my book collection maybe passes on to somebody else that's willing to hold on to it. Or at the very least, like, when my kids donate all of my stuff to the Ark, somebody at the Ark is picking it up to put into their collection so that knowledge doesn't disappear over time. So, yeah, there's just something about the permanence of physical media that I think is really, really important. And that if we lose track of that, if we kind of don't take ownership of the fact that us not having access control to information is, like, a really kind of dangerous and sketchy place for us to be in when it comes to information in general. Like, there should be no barrier between you and educating yourself. There should be no financial or structural barrier between you and learning, right? And as soon as we say, oh, all of my books are on Audible and Google can just turn them off at any moment, like, I'm creating, like, a barrier between myself and the knowledge that I want. And we don't need that. And the easiest way to not have that barrier is to buy books or to have books. And yeah, there is a financial barrier to purchasing a book. But there's also libraries that don't have a financial barrier. And there's also just asking. I don't really know a whole lot of booksellers that are so precious about making money that they won't be willing to work with you sometimes on the price of a book. Or if you really truly have nothing, maybe just offer to do some work to take home a copy of a book. I don't know. Figure it out. But physical media is important. It's definitely one of the hills that I will always fight and die on. So, yeah, just go buy a book. Go buy a DVD or something. Be back in a second. All right, welcome back. So, talking a little bit about physical media, like I want to talk about a movie too. It's not the first time I've watched it. It's actually the second time. I rewatched it on purpose, kind of going into. I don't really know how to explain what motivated me to rewatch it. Part of it is just, sorry, a little burpy. I probably didn't need to announce that because you probably didn't hear it, but there it is. Take that. So I watch a YouTuber named Mercado Media, and Mercado is based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He is a journalist. Like he's a photojournalist that is like kind of an on-the-spot journalist. He covered a lot of the George Floyd riots when they started in Minneapolis. He went to Portland and covered a lot of those riots during 2020. He also went to Ukraine and spent, I believe, 2 years in Ukraine covering that conflict with Russia, that war with Russia, and then obviously now the ice surge, Operation Metro Storm, and all of the insanity that comes with unleashing a secret police on a population is happening like in his hometown. So he is a very boots on the ground photojournalist. He does a little commentary typically at the beginning and the end of his videos, or when he's traveling from place to place. He talks about his opinions on politics a lot. And over the years, his opinions on politics has transitioned from being a very MAGA kind of guy to being a very, left-leaning kind of guy. I definitely wouldn't categorize him as a Democrat in the same way I wouldn't categorize myself as a liberal or Democrat, right? Like just more harder and more pragmatic, I think, is the way I would think of it. But that's not really what's important to me. The importance is like the seeing, right? This moment of watching what is happening and seeing and understanding what is going on. And what we're seeing happening in the United States is like kind of this beginnings of things that we've seen on the news happen in other places, right? In other countries that are getting ready to, jump into dictatorship or like kind of fall apart like on themselves. Especially like we see it very typically in like South American countries, I think, is what we've as a generation, like coming from Generation X from, the 70s and 80s, I think that's what we have seen the most. Watching that happen in real time made me think back to like just how intense and I guess like mentally stimulating the movie Civil War was. So I rewatched it this weekend, and I don't think so. Alex Garland has written like this movie, right, that was largely advertised kind of as like an action adventure-y, like, there's helicopters flying through the air and the Lincoln Memorial blowing up and stuff, which is kind of the visual that we see like in the trailers and like in the, in the build up to the release of the movie but it also is an A24 movie, so we know that it's going to be not quite that, right? When you get into the guts of the movie, it's not that at all, right? Like, it's completely about photojournalism. It's completely about journalistic integrity. It's completely about being the people that are showing the truth, that are showing this is what's happening. I'm not creating your opinion for you. I'm just giving you this is what's happening. And it is absolutely imperative, in my opinion, that that happens, right? That we are able to see in reality what is happening in the world around us. We live in like a time and a society where like AI can manipulate pretty much anything, right? But it can't typically do it in real time. We can go back and we can spin everything every which way, right? You know, you can see the killings of innocent people in the street by federal agents, and one side will say one thing and one side will say the other thing, and it just really depends on who you are, which side you think is lying to you, right? And really the only way for you to create your opinion, to create a true sense of what's going on, is just the activity of seeing, right? Of observing. And because most of us can't be there, the camera becomes our eyes, like the journalist becomes our eyes. And even without words, like those images become like the hallmarks of like society and history and who we are, right? There was more power in one photo of a little kid in a bunny hat than 20 minutes of people being filmed attacked by the police, right? But we have to see, and someone has to show us, right? And they don't have to show us like, I see that picture and I'm not seeing anybody's intention, I'm just seeing the situation, right? I'm not seeing, you know, another great example is when the assassination attempt on Trump happened, and, you know, the ear and the blood and the fist with the flag behind him. That picture, you know, and sure there's conspiracies around, you know, was it on purpose, etc., etc. I don't care about that. That picture tells the story of what's going on, right? And what's going on is, whether it's staged, whether it's contrived, is a defiant Trump who will cravenly stand up and throw his fist in the air just to make himself look strong, right? Here's a guy who literally whines and complains about Super Bowl halftime shows and how mean Jimmy Kimmel is and how terrible reporters are that ask him tough questions. But in the face of assassination, now he's strong, right? Like, this story that he wants to tell about himself, he's conveying, right? And somebody was there to catch the moment where, for just the briefest of seconds, Trump had a backbone, right? But we see it in whole, right? We see the whole thing. The speech before it, the fleeing afterwards, the sycophant fans tying the bandage to their ear, and then him coming out being just fine and diving right back into his grievance politics. We see in real time, like somebody can show us, we can watch it, right? That's journalism. Of course, Donald Trump and this weirdness party, this party of like petty grievances and fighting with each other over who's the most pure. Of course, they hate when somebody takes their picture and shows the rest of the world just who they are. They don't like it. They don't want to be seen, right? Why wouldn't they want to be seen? Why would they hate journalism? Why would they hate us looking at them? Because at its heart, that's what journalism is. It's not the cameraman looking at them. It's not the reporter asking them questions. They're the stand-in for us. They're asking what we're thinking. They're seeing what we want to see. That's the point, is to journal, is to create the record, right? And this goes back to the physical media thing, right? That newspaper, that magazine, that thing that doesn't change. I can't go back and edit a newspaper from the 1880s to make the founder of the city I live in look less like a racist prick, right? That's in print. That's there forever. But if we can eliminate that, then we can create this knowledge vacuum, right? We can create this visual vacuum. We can create a bubble around these people that don't want to be seen. Like if there wouldn't have been a photojournalist at the FBI raid at the Georgia election offices to take Tulsi Gabbard's picture skulking in the darkness, like doing her best spy impression, we wouldn't know, right? We wouldn't know she was there, and she wouldn't be scrambling to explain things. I know this is like deep in the politics weeds, but right now. But the reality is that's like the point of journalism. We don't know what they're hiding if we can't see, if somebody doesn't show us, right? So Civil War is about that, right? We won't know. We won't know Saddam Hussein got captured unless somebody takes his picture. We wouldn't know Muammar Gaddafi got, killed in the street if we wouldn't have seen the video. We don't know what happened to Osama bin Laden because of his funeral at sea, and there's no pictures. So it's a secret. And that creates the space for conspiracy, for is he really dead? What really happened? Blah, blah, blah. That's what makes it so important. And this movie is really, I think, grabs that idea and is able to clearly convey it in such a way that you can see why a journalist is trying to show you. You can see the importance of being there for the moment. And for me, that's why it's so important for me to watch, this live stream from Minneapolis. I can see what's happening. They can't trick me. They can't fool me because I watched it. I saw it in real time. That's the point of journalism, is giving us eyes in places that other people want to hide. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a great movie. Highly recommend it. And that beeping means I'm done. I'm going to leave this little blank on here with a black screen. Be back in a little bit. Okay, so welcome back. Coming up is my interview with Mark Brockway. He is the author of The Shadow Gospel, How Anti-Liberal Demonology Possessed U.S. Religion, Media, and Politics, along with Whitney Phillips. I wasn't able to talk with Whitney, but very excited to have this interview with Mark. Please enjoy it. I'll be back in a little bit to wrap up the show. Thanks. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show, or back to the show. Today, I'm going to be talking to Mark Brockway. He's one of the authors of The Shadow Gospel, How Anti-Liberal Demonology Possessed U.S. Religion, Media, and Politics. It has a big subtitle, so I like to read it instead of just trying to memorize it. But before we get started, Mark, give us a little introduction to yourself. Like, who are you and how did you get started on writing this book?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Gabe. It's good to talk to you. And it's always academics, like we often just put stuff out into the ether and never hear back. So it's nice that somebody out there like actually sort of read it and got something out of it. Like you said, my name is Mark Brockway. I'm an assistant teaching professor at Syracuse University. I mostly study religion and politics. I do some stuff with public opinion and voting behavior, party politics, mostly in the United States, but also in other contexts around the world. But mainly, I study religion and politics and teach courses on U.S. government and politics and religion and politics.
That's awesome. So this confluence of religion and politics is what really got me interested in this book. I
Yeah.
grew up, as probably most people in the United States, in like a pretty fundamentalist, like evangelical Protestant household, all through the '90s, and like
Yeah.
I feel like I was part of the first wave of like people that were experiencing like this enmeshment of religion and politics. And one
Sure.
of the first things I wanted to talk about, because I feel like I personally felt this, was the book is very much centered around this transition from a religion of a returning Christ to a religion of like a coming apocalypse. How do you think
Yeah.
that like has affected kind of our culture and also how it came to be?
Yeah. So it's a really good question. I think I listened to or I watched your other or I guess listened to your other video because I don't think there was a video.
Yeah, sorry.
But I which is fine. I don't know. I and yeah, like I think somebody from your background is the kind of person that we're sort of it's a bit of a microcosm of a person that we're exploring in the book. Not, I mean, we don't talk about individual people experiencing this change, but I definitely want to highlight two things that you said that I think were really appropriate. The first is the change itself, like a move from a religion that has some grounding in anything. So when we normally think about this relationship between religion and politics, or the way that scholars have thought about it before, is in terms of the three B's. So those are belonging, believing, and behaving. So the type of church that you belong to, or the type of religious, what we call a religious tradition that you belong to. So that could be Baptist, it could be Catholic, it could be Jewish, it could be any of those different categories that we often place people in terms of religion. And so that's the group that you belong to might influence how you vote, might influence what kind of candidates you like, might influence what kind of policies that you like. And then the second belief is just exactly what it sounds like. Like, what do you believe? What do you think about a given religious text? What do you think about a certain religious belief? Do you think uh, that Jesus is coming back and is going to save all of humanity? Do you think that there is a devil in hell tempting you to sin and is trying to steal your soul? Like these are all religious beliefs, some of which we think of as more extreme than others, but they're all kind of within the realm of a religious belief, something that you can agree with or think about or interact with. They might be in a like they might be in the Bible, they might be in some other sort of religious structure. And then the last one, behavior, is just what you do. So like you might show up to church. If you're like some of my friends in the South, I always ask, I lived in Oklahoma for 7 years, so I always have a really easy way of determining how religious somebody is, especially in Oklahoma and Texas and like the Bible Belt, which is that I just ask them how many days a week you go to church, right? Because church on just Sunday, that's one thing. If you go to church on Sunday and Wednesday, that's another thing. But it's just what you do. You go to church, you go to Bible study. Even do you read the Bible? How often do you read the Bible? How often do you pray? So these are very typical ways that we understand the interaction between religion and politics. And what our book is looking to do is to say, sure, some of that might still be important, but there's this huge other thing over here that's going on that nobody has looked at, and it has a huge amount of influence on religion and politics and has had, for 80 years. And that part is what you're picking up on the second part of your question, which was also really good. And I would even change your question to slightly to say that it's not even so much a coming apocalypse, it's the idea that the apocalypse is here and we are fighting it now. So it's the shift from the devil in hell trying to tempt you and eat your soul and like, oh, you're going to sin and so you're going to wind up in hell, to the devil all around you. It's a shift from an apocalypse sometime in the future that may or may not happen to apocalypse that's happening right now and that we have to fight right now because we're seeing it in the world around us. And there's a lot to unpack there. I'm sure that we'll get
Oh
into.
yeah.
But it's very, very, I think it's a very, very, it's a often a very difficult mindset change, but a really necessary mindset change to detach the way that we think about this from the way that we normally think about religion, um, to think about it as something completely different, which is what we kind of say it is in the book.
Right. And I think that's the thing that really keyed me in on the book. Like I said, like I grew up, you know, I grew up going to church 3 times a week,
Yeah,
two
good.
Sunday
Sure.
morning, Sunday night, Wednesday evening, the
Yep.
whole works.
Great.
I grew up, my dad was Catholic, my mom jumped around from Protestant denominations, so I got exposed to kind of the panoply of like Christian denominations.
Yeah.
And and then coming out of that, I went to Christian middle school, I went to Christian high school. I ended up working in parachurch and in ministry. So
Yeah, sure.
I was really firsthand to like that. You have groups like the Sojourners kind of pushing like this, liberal gospel, the kind of social gospel. And then on the other side, like, the right to life movement and like, the political, human citizenship before birth and
Yeah,
you
right.
know
Yeah.
in the 80s and 90s groups like the PMRC and like the
Yeah.
Satanic Panic and stuff like that. So being kind of experiencing that firsthand, the book really caught me. And I think the thing that caught me the most is this idea of a religion without a religion. Can you
Yeah.
explain that idea a little bit?
Yeah, I will do my best.
I,
Sometimes,
I got it. And it's like a big
no,
head complicated
yeah,
idea, but I think breaking it down is really
yeah,
interesting.
no, absolutely. And I mean, on the one hand, it's very simple. It's something that looks like a religion, but doesn't have any of the things that we normally think about with religion that I just talked to you about. It doesn't have, it's not about believing in a certain religious figure. It's not about, in this case, it's not about believing in Jesus. It's not about promoting a given religious text or belief in a given religious text, in this case, the Bible. So it's not, normally we use the term fundamentalist to describe somebody who is very, very strict about their interpretation of a religious text. So somebody who really reads the Bible and is trying to follow the Bible word by word. Then we might argue about interpretations of that text. One person might think, oh, the Bible is about a hippie Jesus, and the other person might think, the Bible is about a really strict Jesus. That's fine, but it's an adherence to the text. And it's not what we're trying to say when we say religion about religion is that it's a religion, but it doesn't have any of that stuff in it, right? Like it's not about belief in a given religious figure. It's not about belief in a given religious text. It's not even really about a certain set of religious behaviors. So it's not necessarily about getting people to pray or to go to church. And to Alessa, it's not even really about getting people to do um, like good things or religious good works. It's about something completely different. And I think that what we track in the book and what I think is very, very important for people to understand is that that sounds like when I say that, okay, religion without religion, it sounds like we're taking all of the power out of it. So we normally think of the power of religion as in those things, right? Like people uh, people are incredibly motivated by religion, religious text, their being in a religious community, their religious beliefs. Like religion has incredible motivating power to get to people to do all sorts of different things, right? Like get people to go to wars, get people to give all their money to charity, get people to help out, get people to run for office. Like we think that religion has an incredible amount of power, but the power in the religion without the religion comes from the fact that it is not a religion. And that, as a starting point, is very, very tough to wrap your head around, except when you think about the fact that religion is also sort of a cage, it is a boundary. Religion places very often, especially if you're a strict adherent to a religion, definite barriers around what you can and you can't do. The best example that I can use of this is somebody like Mike Pence. So I think Mike Pence, by all accounts, is a relatively fundamentalist person, with a very strict, very what we would call conservative interpretation of the Bible. And this really limits his behavior in pretty significant ways, right? Like I think he said that he doesn't talk to other women alone or something like this. He's not, Mike Pence is not fixing to dance. Like there are lots of things that he does not do or he does do because of these strict limits that religion places around him. And you often hear people who have left religion or who are atheists or who are looking at religion from the outside say, like, I don't want religion telling me what to do, right? Like, I don't want religion saying, I don't want the Bible in my laws. I don't want religious belief in government. But this thing is so powerful because it doesn't have any of those limitations. You can do whatever you want, right? Like, if you have the facade of a religious tradition, but without any of the restrictions, you get so many of the benefits of all that power, but you don't have any of the limitations. And what this meant is that evangelical Christianity was able to transform from something that started out as essentially a fundamentalist religious tradition in the beginning, like 1940s. They came out of the fundamentalist religious tradition and transformed extremely quickly to this very, very powerful type of religion that is disconnected from any of the strictures, like any of the restrictions of that religious tradition that they came from. And the book is really about what happens when you make a religion like that. What can you do? And it turns out you can do a lot of stuff. It turns out
Right.
it's an incredibly powerful and flexible way to orient a religion towards society around them. And that's what we track in the book is what happens
How
in
do you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was zoning off into the book. I mean, I just think about it a lot and it's just very innovative. I think that people don't appreciate how incredibly innovative it is and how new it is.
So that leads me kind of to this question that I don't know. I've only had the chance to read the book once, and I'll probably dig into it a couple more times because my brain works like that.
That's way more than 99.999.
Yeah, it's okay.
You're
I
way ahead
highlighted
of
it and
them.
stuff for no reason. But so I think a lot about like the structure of church, right? Like this,
Yeah.
even going back to like a Roman, like Catholic, very beginnings of the church. You have the Pope, archbishops, cardinals, that whole mess of
Yeah.
dudes in robes, right?
Sure.
Do you think that Christianity specifically because of its like hierarchical nature was ripe for this kind of like cult of personality to take it over and lean more into leadership than tradition?
Yeah, that's another really brilliant question. And I assume by cult of personality, you're sort of referring to like the Donald Trump, like kind of
But I
MAGA
mean,
stuff.
and even before that, like you talk a lot
Yeah.
like people like Tim LaHaye or James
Yeah.
Dobson, like James Dobson was everywhere in my fucking life in the 90s. Sorry.
Yeah. No, no.
Like, I mean, I was watching, Adventures in Odyssey. My parents
Yeah.
were reading on how to punish me the right way,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
went great. I turned into a punk and a criminal for most of my life.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
it was awesome.
Yeah.
But just that like big leaders are more important than words in a book. Like,
Yep. So I think that again, that's a really, really brilliant question because it does seem when you look at it from the outside that there's this kind of churn of leadership in especially evangelical circles. I think that what I would encourage us to think about is to reframe that question a little bit. And I think that the way that you put that, I think really reflects again a lot of the way that we think about religion as like a hierarchical structure in which there is a leader, and then that leader kind of filters things down to this base of support, and what the leader says goes, and they're able to kind of like tell everybody else what to do. Um, and anybody that's in the Catholic Church knows the limitations of that kind of thing, right? Like I grew up Catholic. It's almost more Catholic to not do what the Pope says than to do what the Pope says, you know?
right.
So that kind of thing has limitations. But even more so, there's sort of another possibility that's going on, and that is if we flip that upside down and we start to see these what appear to be leaders, and they're religious and political leaders, I think fall in this category. I mean, Billy Graham is obviously the first and best example. But the people that you mentioned, also Ronald Reagan and now Donald Trump, um, as instead of being the cause of what's going down, being a reflection or a result of what's going on in this thing. And that doesn't mean that there's not an organizational structure. The National Association of Evangelicals, which is essentially what American evangelicalism is. There were evangelicals in the 18th century doing all sorts of different things, like tent revivals and that sort of thing. But what we think about as evangelical is started with the National Association of Evangelicals. And they had a distinct leadership structure. But again, I think that we don't appreciate how decentralized and how much what we talk about in the book has a life of its own that really might be harnessed by different people over time, but that is consistent and growing over time. And that growth is not the result of a particular leader or a particular relationship with government or a particular relationship with the religious tradition as a whole. And some of the folks that you mentioned, for example, Tim LaHaye is obviously a perfect example. The only reason like Tim LaHaye is able to, and everybody else, of which there have been dozens of people like him, the only reason that they're able to do what they do is because what they do rests on this structure that they're tapping into. So if for 40 years evangelicals, Billy Graham and others, hadn't been pumping an incredible amount of fuel into this fire of the threat of liberals and of Satan that is all around us, there's no way, right, that like the Left Behind series is super popular. And and you could say that for dozens of other things, right? And the reason that we know that it's not super popular, that it wouldn't be super popular, is because if you take it out of context and you look at it as what it is, it doesn't make any fucking sense. Like it doesn't make any fucking sense. Like there is no reason why a book called Satan is Alive and Well on Planet Earth should be one of like it's by the same author that wrote The Late Great Planet Earth, should be one of the best-selling books of all like of that decade. Like that doesn't make any sense. And I also put it like this to folks. If I walked up to you on the street and I said, Satan is coming to eat your soul, right? Like Satan is all around us. And if you don't fight him, like Satan is gonna come get you right now. And he's gonna like eat your soul. Like what your reaction to you would think I was the crazy person.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if I put out a manifesto that said Satan is alive and well on planet Earth, or even if I wrote a piece of fiction that is about the end of the world, I mean, you would think that I was, and that was legit. Like I was saying, oh, like this is how you would think that I was a crazy person, right? Like you would think that like I'm not connected to reality,
Right.
or I am a like insane fun. Like I would be way over here, and but because for up until that point, 40 years, this way of thinking about the world as apocalyptic and as threatening to like real and good Christians has been really, and there's lots of ways that this has happened that we go over in the book. But again, the ground had been prepared for 40 years. So that by the time we get there, by the time we get to like the 70s and the 80s and the satanic panics, it makes sense.
Right.
It makes sense
It,
to everybody. Like
it's
everybody.
it's super interesting because like obviously I was raised in the 80s and 90s, so I don't experience kind of this influx of like, the religion enmeshing in like the 40s and 50s, but like I know that my grandparents were really, really Republican, but also really, really heavily involved in their church. And like,
Yeah.
so I always had an understanding that those two things went together. Like you said, that framework had been laid for decades before I was even alive. So like
Yeah.
it's
You just
fascinating.
like we all catch the tail end of it. Like we all
Yeah.
get like you. I mean, I don't know if you remember, they were talking about Dungeons and Dragons being the devil and
Oh,
all this sort of stuff.
so I literally had to have meetings with my pastor about my
Yeah.
tape collection or about my
Yeah.
D&D books. Like those things got
Yeah.
like hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of my shit that I bought with my allowance got set on fire. Like it
Oh,
was,
really? Oh,
oh
actually
yeah.
burned.
Oh yeah, my mom had a little
I,
bonfire in the backyard for my D&D books, and I
yeah.
probably could have sent a kid to college with those.
Yeah.
Like it's experiencing it was wild. Like I I think one of the things that I find the most fascinating is this kind of like media attachment to it on both sides of the equation, right? So you
Yeah.
have like this explosion in the 80s of, news reports of daycares that are like cannibalizing kids and,
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons suicides and backmasking and heavy metal and all this other crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So that seemed to wane in like the 90s, and now there's like this resurgence of it. Like, what do you think it is that has people so attached with popular media is evil?
Yeah. So that's just good question. It's always fun to hear somebody who it's had their stuff actually burned. I was
It's wild. It's a wild
yeah,
experience, just so you
yeah,
know.
yeah. That's wild. That's so wild. Um, yeah, I can't like I was slightly after you, so and this goes to your question actually. I came in on the like PMRC, like tail end of that. So my parents, they weren't concerned about the devil explicitly, like maybe your parents were, but they were concerned about like violence. I kind of would have preferred, I honestly would have preferred the like the devil stuff because at least it's more interesting. By the time I came around, like I was born in 1985. By that time I come around, it's just boring. It's like family values and blah 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 blah. But a big thing, and what you said is a lot of what people are struggling with right now, which is that okay, 1980s, like devil, and then oh, it dies off, and we like chill out, and then oh, it's like people are talking about the devil again. Like, what's up with that? And what instead of like this, oh, it dies off and then comes back up. The way that people need to understand it is that that's not what's going on at all. What's happened is that you had it in the 80s, and since the 1980s, in fact, since the 1940s, it's just grown. There has been no die off at all. It's gotten more sophisticated and it's gotten better, and I'm going to tell you exactly how in 2 seconds. But it's a steady growth, right, from like essentially the 1940s and the fight against communism to now, right? And because you can't get there from here, right? Like you can't get from if it did die down, that doesn't explain why now we have, the President of the United States calling Democrats Satan, or, you know, executive orders that say schools are performing surgeries on children, right? Like that is more intense than the satanic panics in some ways, so that's a growth. And what happened is exactly tied to, it's really smart to pick up on the role of media, because the way that the message is framed simply changes, right? So if in the 1940s and 50s you have the fight against the evils of communism, okay, and we track this kind of process in the book, obviously it's more complicated, but as people realize it's like, oh, there's not a lot of communists around, then like you have the fight against evil communism, and then in the 70s and 80s it's just a fight against evil, like Satan. Like there's no communism, so we gotta fight Satan. And then like that is very obvious, and people realize, like people literally dug under daycares to try to find satanic, and they did not find, right. People actually went out like, oh, maybe there's not a secret underground cult lair under this. We actually dug and we found it. It's all fine. And if it was really about even actual Satan and actual satanic cults, that would be the end of it. Of course, it's not. What happens is that Satan, saying Satan, gets taken out, and all of this other stuff, which had been equated with Satan in the 70s and 80s. So homosexuality, teachers, popular music is a big one, movies, video games, tons of different things, like even hundreds of different things that were equated with Satan in the 70s and 80s, now becomes the focus. And you can see this evolution through the decades, literally word for word, right? So there are things that are now in presidential speeches or different sorts of political material, that if you just erased the word liberal, you could replace that through the decades with, in the 90s, gay people, in the 70s and 80s, Satan, And so it's become, as it always has, much more sophisticated. It's sort of, in a way, like it learns, right? Like it is a media linked thing. So whatever the popular way to shape this fight against the enemy is the kind of frame that it takes on. And it's incredibly effective, because because I've done it, like I would talk to people all the time, and it is insane. It is amazing how much it shapes the way that we look at the world. I'll give you a really quick example. I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but
oh no, this is exactly what I'm going for. Don't worry.
What you get.
That's why I came here for.
And I see the time. I'm happy to sign on again. I've got time today. But a perfect example is parents' rights. Okay. So if I say to you right now, parents should have rights in their children's education. Like parents should have control and involvement over what their kids learn in school. That sounds perfectly reasonable, right? Like people agree. You would agree with that. Like Okay, like I'm a parent, like it sounds reasonable to me. Except if you translate that back from literally where that term came from, right? Like that term comes from the early 90s. And one of the things that popularized it is a document called the Contract with the American Family,
Yeah.
which was a partner to the Contract with America from Newt Gingrich. And the Contract with American Family says, okay, parents need control over their kids' education. And the reason that they need control over their kids' education is because teachers are trying to indoctrinate them in schools. Now, they're not very specific. Usually it's morality. It might be a gay teacher that's trying to indoctrinate them to be gay. Sometimes, it might be like inappropriate sexual material in books. It could be a lot of different things. But teachers are indoctrinating our kids in schools. And if you translate that, if you back translate that, that came from the satanic panics of the 70s and 80s. That came
With
from
the daycares and stuff.
from the daycares and the elementary schools and all sorts of teachers. That teachers are Satan and they're trying to perform rituals on our children. And that it's not an association, it is the same people, right? The same people that in the 70s and 80s said teachers are Satan and they're trying to do ritual sacrifices on your children, then change that message to say, oh no, we just need parents' rights because teachers are trying to indoctrinate your children and turn them gay, right? And then even if you translate that back, that comes from the fight against communism and that teachers are communists and they're trying to indoctrinate your children to communism. And so if I came to you in a school board meeting and I said, say you're on the school board, Gabe, and I came to you in a school board meeting and I said, Satan is trying to eat our children in school.
Right.
And so we need more parental. You would throw me out. You'd be like, you
you get laughed out of the room.
But parents' rights, when people talk about parents' rights, it means the exact same thing. It is just translated. And people cannot, it is so difficult for us to wrap our heads around it because it's so ingrained in the way that we think about education, for example. Because if you think about it for 2 seconds, doesn't make a lick of sense, right? Like parents, how are parents, like I teach college, I'm not qualified to teach my child. Like, what are you talking about? I mean, it's like hiring a plumber and then arguing with him about the job he's doing when he shows up to your house. It's not that, right? Like you should have a conversation and we need better schools and blah, 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 blah. But this idea that like parents need rights in their children's education doesn't actually make a lot of sense. But it's been woven into the fabric of our society by people that think that teachers are the devil and they're coming to eat and sacrifice your children. And so now we all believe that, right? Like now
Right.
we all parrot that message. And that's the power of it. That's really is that it captures us all and it shapes the way that we all see the world, which is scary.
So, as we're kind of getting towards the end, because I want to be mindful of your time and stuff.
You're fine. I'll talk to you all day long.
I also don't want to. I could probably talk about this for 3 hours,
no
and I don't
worries.
want to do that to anybody else.
Yeah, no worries.
So, as we're like thinking about this, like there's this really powerful like aspect of the Bible that talks very specifically about how when you face resistance, that means it's evil pushing back against you, right? And
Yeah.
we live kind of like in this echo chamber society that has that built into it, that if the world is fighting against you, that means you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's this kind of like self justification system like built into the whole thing that I think stems largely from like Christianity. So looking forward, kind of how do we claw back or how do we go through to get to a point where this kind of mentality and conversation doesn't like dominate an entire country and cause chaos.
Yeah. So, Gabe, I think that that's genius. Like, it's so smart, in terms of the idea that if something is resisting you, you're kind of doing the right thing. I think that that's exactly right. I mean, I would on, and people would disagree with. I'm not a biblical scholar. I would sort of push back against the idea that that is what the Bible is trying to communicate. That like, oh, you just need to like plow through everybody because I don't think that
I
that's what.
don't I definitely don't think the Bible writ large communicates that
Yeah,
idea,
yeah,
but
yeah.
there's definitely like it's that cherry picking that people do from the Bible
Sure.
where they can say, well, this verse says that
Yeah,
if I'm
exactly.
having a hard time, it's Satan's fault, you know?
It's like that, yeah. No, but regardless, I mean, this is what is so intense about this worldview, which, because you're exactly correct, and you could even push that logic even further to say that if I meet, if the apocalypse is here now, okay, and we're looking to fight the apocalypse, how do we know who's like on that other side and who's not?
Wow.
Well, the way that we define, and this is why, a lot of people talk about polarization, a lot of people talk about party politics and party identify. This is why this doesn't have anything to do with any of those things. It's because there's no ideological content. The thing that defines those sides is exactly what you just said. It is the fight. So if you are on that other side, right? Like if you're on that other side and you resist the thing that I'm doing, you are a liberal demon or evil by definition because you're resisting what I'm doing. And that I am fighting you, that like sort of demon on this other, the like liberal demonic, whatever on this other side, am good by definition, independent of any sort of characteristic that I have or any sort of ideology. And I'll give you a really quick example. One of my colleagues asked me 3 or 4 months ago if he thought the Epstein files was going to hurt Donald Trump. And I told him, I hope that I'm wrong. I say that a lot. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think that it will because Donald Trump uses the Epstein files to look like he's fighting people that are coming for him. And thus, it is good for him to be fighting because it's not connected to the reality of if he's in the Epstein files or not. It's only about fighting. And so the more people fight back and push and try to like say, oh no, you're in the Epstein, blah, 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 the better it is for him. The more it defines those two sides. Again, independent of a particular political ideology. You saw this with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene is now basically a Democratic liberal because she, like I said, the Epstein files is a perfect example. And anybody that actually was concerned with the Epstein files, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, now I mean, literally, like people are calling Marjorie Taylor Greene a liberal. And
Yeah.
if you don't need any more, like, what better evidence could be that this isn't about polarization or ideology or whatever, because Marjorie Taylor Greene is the most conservative person on the face of the planet,
Right.
and yet because she resisted Donald Trump and resisted this Epstein file thing, she's out, right? And just over there. And yeah, it's very like challenging to deal with because then the question, of course, is, well, how do you push back against something that gets fed by you pushing back?
Right.
Um, and that is like I don't have all the answers to that.
Like
We're
solve this problem, man. What the heck? No.
right, yeah. I mean, I think the first step is like people have to realize like this thing has been going on for 80 years. Like it has an
Right.
80-year head start on what like even if you buy my argument, which you don't have like nobody has to, but if you accept our argument and you think that what we're describing is like a real thing that we have to deal with, then you also buy the fact that we're just now realizing like it's 80-year head start. And so the task is monumental, right? Like it's a huge task. On the other hand, like the good news is that it's by definition not a real thing. And so you can deal with it by demanding specificity and bringing things back to the real world. And you can say, okay, well, this is hurting this person in this way, right? Like you can bring reality back into the equation because it's very, very difficult. For example, it's difficult for them to do anything real, right? They get into trouble when they try to pass an actual policy or do an actual thing. Immigration is a good example of this, right? I mean, the extent to which it's actually about immigration, I think, is really a huge question. But let's
Right.
just assume for a second that Stephen Miller actually wants to deport people. I mean, they're doing like if their goal was to deport as many people as they possibly can, they're doing a terrible job of it. They are like, they are really messing up people's lives, creating fear and terror. Real people's li are like, they're killing people, right? Like, real people's lives are horribly impacted. But that like, as a policy, it's a terrible policy. And they're not accomplishing what they set out to if their policy is to get rid of as many immigrants as they possibly could. What they are extremely successful at is owning the libs, right? Like that's what they've used that to like, oh, well, we're going to go into liberal cities and mess stuff up. Basically, it seems to be their tactic. And so, in that sense, very successful, right? Like, and that's like, if you again reframe it to be like, this isn't about like an actual policy, very successful, which in itself I find particularly terrifying to think about that lots of the things that they are doing aren't even actually about the people that they're hurting, right? They're about fighting liberalism and getting the power from that fight. I find that terrifying, but I mean, have coped with it.
Yeah, it in the long run it all just seems like power consolidation, right? Like, I don't my personal political predilections are very far away from a two-party system. So
Yeah.
like this idea that like somehow the midterms are going to save us or like Democrats are going to rise to the occasion seems pretty silly to me because it
Right.
has never happened, and probably never will happen. But this
Yeah.
this notion that it's just kind of one big system working against people, I think is really the key point because we see like massive resistance in like Minneapolis that cuts across, like you can't assemble that many people in Minneapolis and not cut across political lines
Yeah.
in opposition to like ICE.
Yeah.
So those that calling out of this is reality seems to be the place to kind of push back in a
Yeah.
meaningful way against it. So
Yeah. It's tough. I mean, it's not easy. I
yeah.
mean, it's
it's
not gonna be
it's
easy.
I think it's a big part, and this sounds kind of dumb, but I think it's a big part of why I started doing these things and like
Yeah.
trying to just talk to regular people is
Yeah.
because I think there's a bigger value in that. Like, there's plenty of big mouthpieces that say big, brash, bold things, but I feel like the United States has been led down really shitty paths by those people over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I think looking towards experts and academics and talking with people that are doing like real work, like I just talked with my friend who works for a treatment facility, like
Oh, cool. Yeah, really.
those are like real people doing real things. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to do my best to highlight people
Yeah.
like you. So
No, it's great. I mean, I hasten to call what anything that academics do real, but I mean no, but we just
I would push against that. Like what happens in academics is us like parsing out how the world has evolved, right? And
yeah.
if we don't take the time to look back and see what happened, we won't grow. Like I'm really fond of saying like history is always worse, right? Like
Yeah.
this is a terrible, terrible time, but I'm watching the
Right.
Ken Burns American Revolution and we were just
Yeah.
like murdering people in their homes. Like so,
Yeah.
it's gotten better. It's just that we're in a really
Um,
ragged and tough spot right now. So
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, I think you're totally right, right? Like, um, I'm just writing down history is always worse, so I can remind myself.
yeah,
Um,
I have to
yeah,
remind myself of that all the
all the
time.
time. That's so smart. Yeah, I'm listening to a podcast about D-Day, like in World War II. No, thank you.
Insane. Insane.
You're
They
right.
climbed up a cliff. Like, what the hell?
Insane. And I mean, the things that those folks dealt with, and you're right that, I waver back and forth between optimism and pessimism with a very healthy dose of cynicism. Cynicism is sort of a slightly part of the political science training, I think. But yeah, I agree with you, right? That one thing we can do in academia is try to suss out what actually happened and what's going on in the real world. That's one thing that we're particularly good at, probably to our detriment, actually. But yeah, I personally get a lot of hope from exactly what you said, that you see real people doing real things. And they are, I see it. I'm involved with some people in the community here, and you see it. You know, and to be fair to them, you see a lot of politicians doing stuff. Like even our local politicians are trying to do what they can. It's not, one thing I also tell people is that whatever this thing is, and whatever, it is a minority thing, right? Like it's a way for 20-25% of the population to have a huge amount of impact, like way outside of their power in a democracy. Like if you were to say, okay, you're 5, 10, 15% of the population, and you want to have as much influence as you can, this is what you would do. So you take over religion, take over a political party, like take over but you know, at the end of the day, it's regressive because they get their power from however big the enemy is. And so the more people they put into that pile, the more powerful they are. But then also there's just more people in that pile, right?
Right.
Like there's just a lot of people. Like now there are a lot of people who are liberal, quote unquote, like, and who basically 60% of the country right now is in Antifa, so there's just a lot of that are the devil. And so it is exactly what you said, that we connect to real people in real numbers, that, we see what's happening. I mean, and it is somewhat effective. Yeah, and it's sort of, it's that kind of curse of seeing the world how it is, but then also like there's a great benefit to seeing the world how it is, because it connects us to other people.
Yeah, I mean it's full of great tragedies, but even more monumental like successes.
Yeah.
Like Propaganda, one of my favorite bands, came out with
Yeah.
a song at the beginning of the summer, and one of the lines in it is that I don't have it perfect off the top of my head, but it alludes to like it's just a statistical almost impossibility that you're here right
Yeah.
now. And
Yeah.
like that notion that like there's a lot of awful happening, but there's probably a lot more positive happening that we just don't see because it's not all over the news.
Yeah.
So
And
I
buying
guess I'm personally just trying to tap into that in some possible way. So
totally. And if you don't need another reason, but if you need another reason, seeing the world as this like evil battle between two sides is exactly what gives it power. So like seeing the world as this polarized conflict that we're set in never-ending battle against each other is exactly why we're in this situation in the first place, and it's completely in our control. Like we don't have to see the world that way. I was just reading about the halftime show, and my friend got sort of a text message inviting him to the like Turning Point USA halftime show thing.
right.
And like I can see, oh, the Turning Point USA halftime show and like the Bad Bunny halftime show as a sign of this like culture war between like white America and brown America, and like two sides battling it out. But if I see it that way, I'm giving one side a lot more power Because guess what? Like, what, 5 or 6 million people watch the Turning Point USA thing, which I guess is a lot of people, but 128 million
Yeah.
people watch the Bad Bunny thing. So we shouldn't like even out, it's like, oh, that like one side benefits from that. If we're like, oh, these are equal like wars against each other.
Yeah.
No, dude, like Bad Bunny is just way more popular than Lip Sync and Kid Rock. And
Yeah,
I
and
think that,
it's funny because like I think personally, and I've talked with my wife about this several times, like in the
yeah.
last couple of months, is that anecdotally I've seen so much evidence of that. Like, you look at the Melania movie, like nearly
Yeah.
like, oh, it's this big success because it lost $40 million. Like,
Yeah. Right.
or we went to a comedy show that was put on by this comedian that does this really cool thing where they deal with mental health issues by teaching you how to do a stand-up comedy routine based on one of your
Oh,
traumas. Really, really cool idea. But like almost everybody on stage was openly homosexual. And there's two elderly people behind me. The husband got all mad and they left, but they're the only people that left, right?
yeah.
Like it was two people out of several hundred,
Yeah.
like there's just so many moments where I'm like, okay, like Minneapolis can put together 50,000 people. Jake Lang can put together six.
Right.
There's this
Yeah.
huge disparity that people like are just, they're hardwired to see them as even teams when they're really, really
That's
not. So,
exactly right. Yeah. And hardwired is the right word.
yeah.
And, that gives it a lot of power that it doesn't have. Seeing it as a religion, see it like saying, oh, well, this is Christianity that's doing this, gives it a lot of power and legitimacy that it doesn't have. Its biggest trick is convincing us that it is Christianity, right? Like
Right.
that's how it happened. I mean, if you like when people started leaving religion in the 19 this is a fun fact. When people started leaving religion in the 1990s, right, we see this huge drop off in like the percentage of the population that identifies as religious. Some of my like advisors, Dave Campbell and Jeff Lehman and John Green, they say that part of the reason is because people saw the rise of the religious right and they said, I'm not like that, and they left religion.
Yeah.
But they didn't leave evangelical Christianity. They left mainline Protestantism because they thought that this was Christianity. And you would think, right, like if you're evangelical, the entire point of your entire religion, supposedly, is to convert people to Jesus. So now 25% of the 25% of the population is no longer religious. And so that seems to be the exact opposite of what you want. Except, except that now evangelicals, instead of being 25% of American religion, or like say 25 to 30% of American Christianity, right? We've lost a bunch of mainline Protestant Christians. Now evangelicals are 30, 40, 50, 60% of American Christians. And so what they do increasingly defines what American Christianity is. And that logic, right, whereby you push out people who are really religious, including fundamentalists, including Catholics, that is at the core like of this process. Because evangelicalism was never meant to convert. Again, people just don't think about it this way, but it can't not be this way. Evangelical Christianity was never meant to convert people to belief in Jesus Christ. Not in America at least, like they did missions and blah, blah, blah. Not in America at least. Because everybody in the United States was Christian, right? Like, how can you convert? Everyone's Christian. So what it was, it's about converting people from other Christian denominations, fundamentalist and mainline Protestant, to evangelicalism. And so this effort was essentially an effort to define. It wasn't an effort to make a new religious tradition. It wasn't an effort to convert people to Jesus. It was an effort to define what American Christianity means and get all of the power that American Christianity has. And in that, it's been unbelievably successful because
it's super fascinating. Like I've never really thought of it as like a conversion from Christianity to Christianity, but I grew up Catholic and then I was Lutheran and then I was rebaptized in a vineyard church when I was a teenager. Yeah. So that makes so much sense. Oh, that's yeah.
And well, I'm gonna totally right, Gabe, you're gonna have to watch this back. And guess what? Everybody believes that. Even atheists, right? Like even people that criticize this thing, as if you then look at that and say, oh, American Christians are out of control. American Christians are against abortion, which is not true. American Christians are against this. American Christians are conservative. They're trying to put our morals on everybody else. You are participating in the creation of that world.
Oh man, I'm gonna humble brag for like 2 seconds here.
Please do.
I have this ongoing conversation with my friends Brandon and David, and when they hear me say this, they'll probably be like, "What an ass!" But I have taken to very specifically calling this kind of Christianity American evangelicism because it's not. Yeah. It's like your book talks about. It's completely divorced from like any kind of like biblical anything. And so that transition had happened in my brain without me really piecing the parts together. So I appreciate that.
Gabe is right. To Gabe's friend, Gabe is right.
Yeah. They already listen to me sometimes. So the fact that they put up with my bullshit is probably the best thing about them. Well, Mark, I do want to let you go that we can both keep going, and hopefully you can get some hot tea because I can hear your poor throat, man.
I've been chugging it.
But just to give you the opportunity, if anybody wants to like find your book or like anything else that you want to like put out there, how can people find you and find this, in my opinion, spectacular book? So
so you can just Google me. I mean, you can really Google me. Send me an email if you want. Also, our book is available. The best place to buy it is probably through Penguin Random House, which is linked up with MIT Press. There's tons of other places that you can get it as well. That's probably the closest to me. But yeah, if you find me, like you just Google my name, my email. I think my email's address is on the intranets.
I found you.
Yeah, I'm not hard to find.
Right. I did, before I let you go, I did want to leave you with one anecdote that I talked about in the episode where I initially talked about your book.
Yeah.
And my friend David, who's part of that group, he used to be a Baptist pastor. And so we have a lot of conversations about this stuff because it's dramatically affected our lives. So when I finished the book, I immediately bought him a copy and sent it to him. And he read it. And we talked and stuff, and he posted about it on his Facebook, right?
Oh, cool.
Always a mistake. But a guy had responded, did you see that they timed this to come out right after Charlie Kirk's death? I was like, there are 100+ pages of citations. They definitely didn't put this book out in 2 weeks. Talk about just not understanding how book publishing works at all.
And also it came out before Charlie. I mean, it came out before Charlie, but it's back in April.
Right. People are stupid.
I'll tell you what though, in along with this topic that they actually don't care about the real thing. Dude, like a couple weeks ago, I was quoted, and I said just kind of a lot of the stuff that I told you, but I was quoted in an article with Charlie Kirk in the title. And I didn't get a single piece of hate mail, like not even email.
Right.
Disappointing. People have moved on, I guess. Like 3 weeks later.
Oh, it's the impermanence of media is something I talk about in the before I recorded with you. I'm very obsessed with like physical media specifically because of that. And I talked about how the chaos today is Bad Bunny. In 2 weeks we won't be thinking about it for a second. So I'll just be listening to his music still.
Cool.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mark.
Of course.
I hope to read your next book.
Yeah. I don't know, like the thing I liked most about the Shadow Gospel is the devil horns on the spine. That was
Right.
I'm so excited about that. The next book, the title should be Popular Demonology. It's just about like the Shadow Gospel is more historic, and the next book is going to be really just about basically the first 8 months or so of the Trump presidency
Oh
and
wow.
what's going
Yeah.
on. We can like look at all that stuff in a different way. Essentially apply the first to what is going on. But yeah, I'll definitely I'll shoot you a copy for sure.
Oh, that'd be
Reach out
amazing.
anytime. Yeah, reach out
Literally
anytime.
not something that's ever happened to me in my life. So well, thank you again, Mark. I truly appreciate your time, man.
Thank you again. Appreciate it.
All right. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. So there's a setup change that has happened between the beginning of this video and the next one. Just trying different things, trying to make sure that everything works the way I want it to work. I may fall back on this camera that I'm using right now. Look, I'm just out here like doing a video blog, like my own version of a YouTube zine. So like, I don't need it to be in 4K, and the GoPro that I have keeps overheating. So why not use this 1080p camera that has been very serviceable for a very long time? So, yeah, enjoy me in 1080 instead of 4K or whatever. I don't really care that much. So, yeah, hopefully you found that interesting. I loved this conversation, right? So, I'm setting up another interview that I'm going to be doing that'll come out with the next episode. I don't want to talk too much about it, just in case like timing things fall through, but hopefully we'll be bringing another episode. I'll be bringing another episode with an interview next week. I'm trying to stay on a schedule, but like I'm not going to make any guarantees for that because I'm just me. And like all of this is up to me. So I have to figure out how to do it on my own. Which is neither here nor there. Plenty of people do that I'm rambling. Anyways, yeah, I just really hope that you're enjoying what I'm doing. I would encourage you that if you have something that you're really passionate about or interested in, that you share it with the rest of the world, because I think that's really important. But if you want to share it with a few extra people, hit me up, share it with me. I'd love to talk to you about you, whatever it is that you're interested in, whoever it is that you're interested in, whatever project you're working on. Like, I think I talked with Mark in the interview a little bit about how I think it's important for us to have like people communication, right? To have face-to-face communication. It's a lot harder to demonize somebody that you know, right? There's a lot of conservative people and people that have differing opinions than me that I'm very close with, right? But what matters is that I know them. And I can't get to know every person on the face of the earth, but I can definitely get to know as many people as possible so that the connections I have with humanity aren't tenuous, and so that I don't fall into the trap of calling people evil when they're just being human, and humans are kind of trash, right? Including myself. So anyway, with that in mind, I'm not really an interesting guy. I'm just interested in any interesting things. I've been Gabe Giannis, and if I hated you, you would know.